All right, so you probably know the story of Joseph and his amazing coat of many colors, right? It's this epic tale of dreams, jealousy, family drama. I mean, he goes from the bottom of a pit to a palace in Egypt. It's one of the great sweeping sagas of the ancient world. But is it really as continuous as we think? Because just when things are getting good, right when the tension is at its absolute peak, Joseph's been betrayed, he's been sold, he's on his way to Egypt, the story just stops. The narrative slams on the brakes. Chapter 37 ends, and chapter 39 picks right back up with Joseph in Egypt. And jammed right in between is Genesis 38, this really weird, sexually explicit, and what seems like a totally random story about Joseph's brother, Judah. It honestly feels like someone just changed the channel in the middle of the best part of a movie. And that, right there, is our central mystery. It's a question that has had readers, scholars, you name it, scratching their heads for centuries. What in the world is this story doing here? Why would you interrupt one of the Bible's most gripping narratives for this strange, kind of uncomfortable detour? For a really long time, the general consensus was, well, it was basically just a mistake. You had influential scholars like E.A. Spicer who pretty much called it what it looked like, a clumsy insertion. They figured some later editor just kind of plopped this unrelated story right in the middle of the text, interrupting the main drama for no good reason. But what if that's completely the wrong way to look at it? What if the ancient author wasn't clumsy at all? What if they were an absolute literary genius? What if this so-called interruption isn't an interruption at all, but is actually the key to understanding the entire story? So, to crack this case, we have to look at the text in a totally new way. We've got to stop seeing it as just a jumbled history and start seeing it as a deliberate, crafted piece of literary art. And for that, let's grab our detective's toolkit. Our main tool is something called narrative criticism, an approach really championed by the scholar Robert Alter. You can think of it like this. Instead of digging into a building's foundations to see how it was built, we're just going to step back and appreciate the finished architecture, to see the work of art as it was meant to be seen. Now, when you use this lens, nothing is an accident. Every single word, every repeated phrase, every weird little detour, you have to assume it's an intentional choice by the author. We're not just digging for historical facts, we're analyzing things like plot, character development, and pacing to see how the author is creating meaning. Okay, tools in hand, let's apply them. We're going to dive right back into that bizarre story about Judah, and yeah, this is the same brother who came up with the idea to sell Joseph into slavery, and his daughter-in-law, Tamar. So here's the quick setup. Tamar marries Judah's oldest son, and he dies. Then she marries the second son, and he dies too. So Judah, he's totally freaked out. He thinks Tamar must be cursed or something, so he unjustly sends her away as a childless widow, denying her the family and security she was entitled to by law. But Tamar? Oh, she is not about to let this injustice stand. She comes up with this incredibly bold, high-stakes plan. She disguises herself as a prostitute, waits for her own father-in-law on the road, and when he propositions her, she agrees. But with a condition. She demands a pledge until he can send her payment. And get this, look what she asks for. His seal, his cord, and his staff. This is basically his ID, his authority, his entire identity. Okay, fast forward 3 months. This is where it all comes to a head. Word gets back to Judah that his daughter-in-law Tamar is pregnant. And in a moment of just stunning hypocrisy, he screams for her to be brought out and burned. But as she's being dragged to her execution, Tamar plays her trump card. She sends a message to Judah, and the specific words she uses, well, they're the key that unlocks this entire literary puzzle. First, let's hit pause and rewind. I want you to think back to the chapter right before this whole mess started. Judah and his brothers had just sold Joseph, and to cover their tracks, they take Joseph's coat, dip it in goat's blood, and show it to their father Jacob. And they say to him, "Recognize, pray, is it your son's tunic or not?" Okay, now jump forward again. Tamar is facing death. She sends Judah's things to him, the seal, the cord, the staff. And what does her message say? Recognize, pray, whose are this seal and cord and this staff. Do you hear that? It's an almost identical echo. This is it. This is the smoking gun. This is not a coincidence. It is an absolute masterstroke of literary genius. The author uses the exact same, very rare Hebrew phrase, hakernah, recognize, pray, in both scenes. The deceiver is now the one being deceived. He's caught in a trap of his own making, exposed by the items he pledged for a goat, just like he once used a goat to deceive his own father with a piece of clothing. It's incredible. And when Judah is confronted with this evidence, with his own words and his own stuff thrown back in his face, he doesn't argue. He doesn't make excuses. The trap works perfectly. He has this huge moment of revelation, and he says it out loud for everyone to hear. She is more in the right than I. He completely owns his failure. So, okay, it's some very clever wordplay. Big deal, right? Well, it's actually a huge deal, because this interruption isn't an interruption at all. It's the single most important moment of character development for Judah, and it sets the stage for everything that comes next. I mean, just think about the structure for a second. The author very deliberately places Judah's story of moral and sexual failure right before Joseph's famous story of moral and sexual integrity when he resists Potiphar's wife. The contrast couldn't be more powerful. One brother gives in to impulse and fails the test. The other brother stands firm and passes with flying colors. So when you read it this way, Genesis 38 isn't some random detour. It's the furnace that forges Judah's character. This humiliating experience transforms him from the callous, scheming brother into someone who is actually capable of humility, of repentance, and even of self-sacrifice. This is what prepares him to become the man who, later in the story, will literally offer his own life to save his youngest brother, Benjamin. It's not an interruption. It's the pivot on which the entire Joseph saga turns. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? When you start to look at these ancient texts as incredible pieces of literary art, a section that seems awkward and out of place suddenly transforms into a moment of profound genius. It just goes to show you that sometimes the most confusing parts of a story, well, they might just be where the deepest meanings are hidden, just waiting for us to finally recognize them.